Today, I want to talk about AIPAC. And the reason why is I think there is a growing sentiment within the United States that we're pretty much fed up with foreign governments interfering in our politics. So what I want to do is I want to take a look at a video from Breaking Points where they cover a few different candidates and how they're dealing with the AIPAC question, and then provide some of my feedback on the top of that.
Democrat Seth Moulton, who's running for Senate in Massachusetts, is now saying he's refusing all AIPAC contributions and will return what he's gotten. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro getting pressed on the question. Let's look at how he responded to it.
Article in the New York Times about Democrats pulling away from AIPAC. So clearly it's having some impact on them politically if they feel like they got to.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's become a political issue. You've used it as a political issue. You've questioned federal representatives when they're on here on that. I mean, I think if I can say this to you, not trying to offend you here, but I think it's a little bit of a shortcut and a little bit of a lazy question. I think the better question is, how do you really feel about Israel? How do you feel about a two-state solution? How do you feel about the war? How do you feel about the hostages or hungry kids or what have you? I think demanding answers on those questions is more important than.
And here's the thing with his framing of it. It's just gross, really, because what he's asking about essentially is, are you going to bend the knee to Israel or really any foreign power, right? Any country that's not the United States? Like, what are your goals in office? Is it to make America better, or is it to be focused on what's good for Israel? And so to ask about, hey, break it down to these individual things, like, yes, in a macro sense, they may, okay, if you feel about October 7th, or how you feel about blah, 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 whatever, these other things, yes, they can influence, hey, we should be helping out Israel, but on the macro sense, it's not the same question. And so by him kind of flipping it and trying to do mental jujitsu on him, it's just a disingenuous turning of the question, in my opinion.
Hey, what about this lobbying group or that lobbying group?
Well, what do you say to the critics who argue that U.S. foreign policy on Israel is often shaped not by national interest, but by the lobbying strength of these people?
I think that's a fair conversation to have. And I think it should be on any elected official at the federal level to say, hey, I'm listening to this group. But by the way, there's groups on other sides too. I'm listening to that group. But at the end of the day, we want our federal representatives to be able to sit here in this chair and answer the questions about why they voted A or why they voted B or why they feel a certain way. And I think it's just a little lazy to say, oh, it's got to be because of that interest group. Maybe someone actually believes those views, or maybe someone feels strongly about that particular way.
And so the thing he said at the end there, and we'll get into Moulton in a second when we get Sagar's take on this. The thing he said at the end there, we said, okay, well, you've got the lobbying group AIPAC on the one side, and then you've got the lobbying groups on the other side. That's actually false. There is not a lobbying group on the other side. The only thing that would come remotely close might be CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. CARE's annual budget is like $10 million. AIPAC spent more than that in one House race last year. Double that in one House race.
And the thing is, too, is that, yes, there is no both sides to it, exactly what he's saying. There's no funding on the anti-Israeli side, obviously. But I think the other problem with it is, that a lot of people have, and myself, to be quite honest, is why are they not registered under FARA? They're a foreign entity that clearly has the best interest of Israel. So they should be under FARA, and they should not be allowed. There should be rules on how much they can donate to each candidate. So yeah, exactly what he's saying, where they spent more than $10 million in one race. That's insane. So of course, candidates are going to be beholden to them when they can get such an amount of funding from one group. And because, once again, there's no both sides to it. Like, there's no one saying, oh, we don't, it's not you can pick and choose. There's only one side that's providing all the funding. So it's completely unbalanced between the two.
So the entire national budget of the organization that they would say is like on the other side can't even compete with them in a single House race. So it's just not true. And so the problem I have with Shapiro's response there, and this is what I'm curious for your take on, is rather than answering the question, too often when people ask this question, they're told, you're not asking the right question. You should ask other questions. And it's like, no, you know what? We're adults. Like, this is the question I have, and this is the question I want an answer to.
Dude, we will ask whatever we want. To say it's a lazy question is because you're uncomfortable answering it because you're pro-Israel. Like, and this is what drives.
That's exactly correct. And that's the thing that it honestly makes a good politician, right, is being able to redirect the question. And that's what he does here. But that, I mean, once you start seeing them doing it, you can't overlook it anymore. Same thing with Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He does the same thing. They're so slippery. They refuse to answer any sort of question that might get them in trouble with their donors, and then they try and redirect it and answer it in a way where they're literally saying nothing. It's just like, oh yeah, well, why don't we also talk about this? I'm like, no, that doesn't answer the question that we had at all. And I feel like anyone who interviews these types of people need to just call that out. Like, if you're not willing to do that, don't even have these people on, because it's not a useful conversation at all. And I think people's audiences, like, if you expect that to come from these people who are allowing them on their programs, you need to call it out when you see it happening, because it's just so gross and slimy, and it allows them to continue getting away with providing non-answers. But I think if everyone's audience starts calling them out on it and saying, hey, look, you didn't get an answer to this question. Like, why are you even having a conversation with them if you do not provide some sort of pushback, especially to an elected official, right? I think there is a lane where it's like, okay, just allow them to espouse their ideals. But like with a Josh Shapiro, he's so slippery and elusive on this kind of a thing. Same thing with Pete. Like, you can't just have them on, and especially if you kind of see yourself as any sort of actual political program, you need to sharpen your tools. You need to be able to stand up to them and try and demand some sort of realistic answer from them, at least in my opinion.
Drives me crazy about these politicians is fundamentally, let's take Charlemagne. All right, Charlemagne is not one of us. He doesn't, as far as I know, he doesn't follow this stuff day in and day out. It's not his full-time gig. It's just politics, right? So for him, AIPAC is a proxy for political control and Israel, and he's pissed off about the war in Gaza. That's it. That's the question. So answer that question, which Shapiro doesn't want to answer. Why does he not want to answer that? Because he supports it, right? At the end of the day, he's one of those people who's like, yeah, Netanyahu's a real problem, but Israel is a place where gay people can get married, right? Like, this is the line that's basically baked into them. Remember also, what was that college op-ed that Shapiro wrote about the IDF? I'd have to go back and to check. It was genuinely crazy though. And it's one of those where with Josh Shapiro, this is going to be a political problem for him, because I don't know what it is. I don't know why. It could be religious. It could be his own personal feelings. It could just be genuine, like not swimming in the world of today's Democratic base. But him, Newsom, and who else am I missing? Who messed up on the AIPAC question? But I mean, these are the two highest profile actual contenders. The fact that they can't do, Cory Booker, that's what it was. The three of them, the fact that they have never grappled with this, it's like, I don't know. I'm sorry, just sheer lack of political talent. Real talent is the ability to thread the needle on that question. I haven't seen a single one of them been able.
And what I'll say to that point, that is a good point. Yes, if you have not seen, there was a very awkward conversation with Gavin Newsom where he was asked that, and he was just like, oh, that's interesting. And he kind of tried to insinuate that it's like, why are you so the same thing that all of them do, right? Where they're like, why are you so focused on AIPAC specifically? There's lots of other ones. And blah, blah, and oh, that's interesting. He refuses to actually talk about AIPAC. And then same thing with Josh Shapiro and his answer on it. The reason why it's so damning, I think, for both of them is that both of them have, as was rightly pointed out here, both of them are eyeing the presidency, and I guarantee you will run in the primary for 2028. So when they do it and they, step up to the plate and have to have actual conversations, first of all, in their own primary, I guarantee you they will be called out as being pro-Israel, because that's the bar now. That is the standard bar, right? There are going to be at least a couple of candidates that will turn it on them at every single chance that they get, right? Every single point, they're going to be like, well, how do you feel about Israel? What about Israel? Because they answer this question so poorly. Because I think it's indefensible, right? There's no world in which you can defend continuing to support Israel. I mean, it's literally an 80-20 issue. 80% of the people are not on the side of continuing to ship aid to them, continuing to back them, continuing to, right? And that's why Trump is forcing them to basically have an off-ramp for what's going on in Gaza right now. Why he finally has put his foot down, because it's a toxic issue to try and continually defend Israel, especially right now. And especially if you're a Democrat, because Democrats have fully turned on Israel. They want nothing to do with them. So if you're a Democrat in the Democratic primary in 2028, good luck to you if you are still trying to support Israel in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, on both of them, and especially, like I said, Shapiro and Newsom, good luck. Because you're going to get ripped to shreds. Not even to mention if they were to make it out of the primary, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they were to make it out, and then, oh, by the way, going against a Republican candidate, and although I will say Republicans have a little bit more leeway to be openly Israel. I mean, just look at like Ted Cruz, and there are a few of them that are still this way. But I think even there, right, you're having, I mean, the whole turning points thing that has been going on where, Charlie Kirk was starting to turn, Marjorie Taylor Greene is starting to call it out now. And I think that is where the Republican Party is headed as well, is that, hey, we need to remove ourselves from Israel, truly American first. That is what we need. And I think we're getting to a point in time where it's just literally going to be so toxic to even attempt to be even remotely pro-Israel because of what is, continuing to go on there. And again, we have been kind of walking it back, but it's still a very real possibility that it boils over, especially when Bibi Netanyahu is going to face either continuing what's going on there or being prosecuted. What's in his best interest? So I think it will come back and start ramping up again, although Trump has seemingly put his foot down on this issue. But yeah, I think there's no way, final analysis on it, there's no way that any candidate that is trying to be evasive will make it out of the primary process for 2028.
Yeah, Newsom had a similar response.
He flubbed it.
He said, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
He rather than answering the question, he confronted the idea of the question.
Right,
He said,
exactly.
I find the question interesting.
Yeah, I find the question interesting.
He's
Yeah.
trying to make some
Right.
allusions or something there.
Yeah.
And then Booker.
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, he kept saying, oh, it's interesting. Why are you focusing on AIPAC specifically? First of all, because FARA, they're not registered with FARA. And then second of all, because that's where we're funding a genocide. So guess what? That's where we're going to be interested in what's going on there and why we're questioning that relationship. But yeah, exactly. He calls it out here as well. Gavin Newsom refused to even, he tries to switch it and then insinuate that the person asking about it is anti-Semitic, which is just the classic move from pro-Israel forces.
Also was like, I don't get asked about this a lot, and like, what about? And then he really face planted with the, why doesn't anybody ask me about Nigeria or Sudan? And if you check his like statements over the last 5 years, there's like one about Nigeria, and had nothing to do with what he's talking about. It's like wait a minute, you don't talk about that either. So get out of here.
What? Also, are we funding that? This is what they always do. They're like, Christians are being slaughtered in Nigeria. I'm like, wow, that's horrible. How much are we paying for that? And they're like, yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like,
and so Moulton.
And that's exactly why it's a toxic issue, is because there's no answer for any of this stuff, which makes it so much more comical, because you look at it and you just go, like, what? If you have no answer to it, it just looks worse and worse and worse and worse. It's indefensible, as I said. So yeah, when they try and whataboutism with it, you can always just come back and be like, well, how much aid are we giving to Nigeria or literally anywhere, wherever they try and pin it on, pro-China or pro-whatever. How much money are we giving them? Is it hundreds of billions of dollars? Because if it's not hundreds of billions of dollars, I think it's inconsequential, the lobbying groups for them. But that's just my opinion on it.
Is trying to thread an interesting needle here, because he's saying he's still very much pro-Israel, but he doesn't like the Netanyahu government. And he said AIPAC's problem is that they are too reflexively and unapologetically supportive specifically of the Netanyahu government. Let's roll C2 and then get AIPAC's response and unpack this.
Recent polling has shown that Democrats do not support what has happened in Gaza and that they've pulled away from support for Israel. Or is it just that you yourself have seen the images of what's transpired in this war and that it's reshaped the way you see the United States relationship to Israel?
Look, the United States relationship to Israel is incredibly important, but I strongly disagree with the current Israeli government under Bibi Netanyahu. And I've been very outspoken about this for quite some time. I mean, in fact, I wrote an op-ed just after October 7th, right after those heinous attacks, saying that Bibi Netanyahu needs to have a political plan for the future for Palestinians and for Israelis to live peacefully side by side. He still doesn't have that plan. So after months and months of pressuring the Israeli government, pressuring AIPAC itself to not just follow the Israeli government, I finally decided that I just cannot accept contributions from an organization whose mission is to support the current government in Israel.
Congressman, but let me just...
And you know what's super interesting about his stance here is that he is on the Armed Services Committee. So, like, he has the best interests of the military-industrial complex to serve, and even he is finding it politically toxic, so that he has to reject AIPAC funding. So that just shows you how bad this situation has gotten here, is that even someone who is pro the armed services, so pro military industrial complex, is stepping away from AIPAC. So just very interesting. I wanted to make it a point to call it out. Again, Armed Services Committee, and he's basically swearing off AIPAC money. No one is making it out of the Democratic primaries who takes money from Israel, point blank.
Reconcile rejecting AIPAC money, but still voting for the same policies that AIPAC is advocating for. You have continuously supported sending offensive weapons.
That's not true. I've frequently disagreed with AIPAC. I mean,
I know you disagreed with AIPAC,
with them over the
but you have been voting for...
Wait, slow down.
I know, but I didn't finish my question. I was saying you voted for sending weapons to Israel, which is something AIPAC has advocated for.
Okay, so
and that's still a very good question, because in essence, he's 100% correct, right? And that's what I'm pointing out, because it's nuanced, right? Because he's still voting with the military-industrial complex, right? Which, again, as being pointed out, he's 100% correct. That is the question that needs to be asked, right? Because it's one thing to say, I'm not taking AIPAC money, but then if you're still, in essence, voting for them, that's what we're pissed off about. So yeah, that's what needs to be called out. That's the question that needs to be answered. But yes, just the illusion that you're bought and paid for is what they're trying to distance themselves from. And they should, right? Because Americans are fed up with it. However, if you're still functioning the same way and or getting contributions from some other shell company, some other whatever NGO that is basically replacing AIPAC and not named AIPAC, well then functionally it's the same thing, right? So it's very good to realize when people are still voting to send billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to Israel, and okay, why are you still continuing to vote in that same way? Very good question.
Sure, there are some votes that we'll agree on.
Very interesting, Ryan. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those where it does take some level of political courage to say, no, I won't take a single AIPAC dollar. Now, I'm not saying that his response,
running for Massachusetts Senate.
And he's running for Massachusetts Senate. And he's got a couple of things on his side, right? So he's young, that's number one. So he's running against an opponent who is much older. That being said, remember, Ed Markey survived a primary challenge from one of the Kennedy clan.
First Kennedy to lose.
Yeah, the first Kennedy to lose in the state of Massachusetts.
We are not required to remember which one it was because we lost.
There you go. And what I remember, if I recall, again, the race, which...
And you would hope that people are getting fed up with the gerontocracy out there, so they will vote. And the other thing, too, that is positive about that is that typically representatives who are younger are going to be less beholden to Israel because they don't have that historic lens to view them through of, oh, the Holocaust. Because that automatically justifies any action that they take in older generations' minds, which is just completely divorced from reality, right? You have to take a lens of what is going on right now. Do I support the actual actions that they're taking, not just giving them a blank check to do whatever they want? And I think the younger you get in a representative, in this instance, the less beholden to that mindset you are. So that is a positive. But again, it's the same thing of I'm rejecting the AIPAC money, but functionally, I'm not actually doing what the American public want, which is we're not sending any more aid to this country.
I covered extensively with Crystal, was that he really embraced a lot of the youth vote,
Green New Deal,
the Green
Sunrise.
New Deal, the Sunrise movement.
AOC,
This time around, though, this is a very smart thing for Seth Moulton to do. It's a big headline, no matter what. And it's one of those where, regardless of whether he's threading the needle or not, the truth is that, and I've said this, I think we've all said this here on the show, what you want to do is to make your position politically convenient. Politicians are soulless scum. They believe in almost all of them believe in nothing. So,
and this is the other thing to think about with him rejecting AIPAC money, is that then he's going to get all over the news for it. And so even if he does not, and I think this is what Donald Trump did very well, especially in 2016, but by having this headline, he's going to get a ton of earned media, where basically everyone's going to want to interview him. They're going to say, oh, this is something different. This is novel. As long as this is unique and a talking point, all of the news channels will want to talk to him about this. And so what that does is he doesn't actually need money from AIPAC at that point in time, as long as this continues to be true, because he's going to get earned media coverage. And so he's going to get talked about. He's going to get a bigger impact than what he could realistically get from donations from AIPAC in the first place. So although it may seem like, oh yeah, he's doing, he's a good guy and doing the right thing, and that's why I say that question still needs to be asked of like, why are you continuing to send aid to them then? Again, as long as this is a unique stance that he has, like once everyone starts doing this, they're not going to get as much media coverage. But while he's one of the few who are not, he's going to get way more coverage than the AIPAC contributions could provide him. So do not discount that. That is a very intelligent political move to be making right now. Again, as anti-AIPAC starts spreading and the news outlets don't care about it as much, okay, whatever, then it's not, it's more politically brave to do it at that point in time. But right now, it's not actually that brave to swear off AIPAC, because you're going to more than make up for losing that funding amount with organic coverage.
What you want is for your position to be the cynical choice. That's how you really win, all right? That's how the neocons won. That's how the Israel lobby won. You think half of these people care about Israel? No, okay? They just thought free money, easy way to get elected. Yeah, you got to go and kiss the wall sometimes. It is what it is. Now you flip that around, and that's really how, in my opinion, you win a sea change in politics.
And he's looking over his shoulder a little bit too, because Ayanna Pressley has been on.
And especially when it's the contrarian and 80%, 80-20. You're on the 80% of an 80-20 issue. So, yeah, by saying that, it's popular with the electoral base, the people who are voting you in, and it's contrary to what's going on. And so, of course, media is going to want to chase those ratings. You're going to get more exposure from them.
Eyeing this.
I didn't know that.
This Senate seat, and was hoping that Ed Markey would not run for re-election. He frankly shouldn't. I mean, come on, man. There's plenty of you. Go ahead. Enjoy your life.
Yes.
Like, how old is he? 80 something?
Yeah, he's like 80. Yeah,
come on,
it's
man.
too much.
Enough.
I couldn't agree with you more. Between Janet Mills, between him, Schumer, and the rest of these people, I feel like it's like a movie scene. I'm like, do you have any shame?
Yeah.
Have you no shame, sir? Seriously.
And because Pressley came in with the squad, she's been critical of Netanyahu in general, specifically, but also Israel more broadly. And so if she gets into the race too, that'll make it interesting. But let's throw up AIPAC's response here.
Yeah, we have it in front of us.
AIPAC says, Representative Moulton is abandoning his friends to grab a headline, capitulating to the extremes rather than standing on conviction. His statement, they should say business. When are people going to start saying in statements rather than standing on business? His statement comes after years of him repeatedly asking for our endorsement and is a clear message to AIPAC members in Massachusetts and millions of pro-Israel Democrats nationwide that he rejects their support and will not stand with them. Yeah.
And this is where, if you go back to any of my videos where I'm talking about all of the pro-Israel forces that are ravenously turning on people, because, again, to the point I was making, are you voting against any of this? Like, whether you distance yourself from where I'm not accepting AIPAC donations, are you voting differently at all? No, he's not, because he's supporting the military-industrial complex, which wants to ship out arms to wherever they can ship them to. So with that, yeah, he's still going to be sending you aid. He's still going to be supporting your actions through votes, at least. So although he's distancing himself by not accepting AIPAC contributions, why are you attacking him? Functionally, he's still the same. The issue is they're afraid that if other people see it to be politically convenient and that, oh, by the way, he won this election by doing that, taking that course of action, they're afraid that other people will continue to do that as well, and then maybe some of them will actually start to act on that, right, and vote away from sending aid to Israel. And so, of course, all the AIPAC members are terrified of that, so they want to publicly admonish him. But the problem with that is, by making it a fringe thing to do, where not as many people are doing it, well, then it just empowers people to get in using that route. But if there was a flood of people all rejecting AIPAC money, no one would get interviewed, it wouldn't be unique, and there would be less of a chance of people getting in. And if it's by onesie, twosie, again, you want to flood the area, because if everyone's doing it, then it's not unique, it's not special, and they're not going to get any sort of coverage. But by trying to basically shout down people doing this, well, then they're allowing them to trickle in one and two. And if people see it being a successful tactic, then more of them will start to do it. But not as fast as if they didn't say anything, they didn't call any attention to it. They're just Barbara Streisand affecting it here. And I think if people, again, everyone's now going to be paying attention to it, versus if they just shut up and didn't say anything, and if it happens, it happens. So that, again, that's just my viewpoint, and it's once again how pro-Israel forces are shooting themselves in the feet by calling attention to this. And same thing they're doing by attacking Megyn Kelly, same thing they're doing by attacking Tucker Carlson, same thing they're doing by attacking Charlie Kirk, by attacking Candace Owens. It's just making them more popular. Same thing here. It's going to make this position more popular if it works out. And even if it doesn't, you can just look at how many TV appearances, how many, there is the saying, no press is bad press. I think that very well could be the situation here.
That is, I mean, no lies detected throughout that. He definitely has been asking for their support. And then to go back to Ayman Mohyeldin's point, he's still voting for weapons for Israel, which is still going to be a significant liability. But I think the public would at least prefer if you're doing that, at least you're doing it because you really love sending weapons to a genocidal state, but not because
well, we
you're
should
like
remember
being bought
Moulton's
off.
whole shtick in this town has been the national security Democrats as it came to Washington. I mean, a lot of us, a lot of people, we don't follow this stuff day in and day out. I remember in the old days when he was like, "I'm the national security Democrat," right? And immediately after the election, he actually came out. What did he say? He said something about, because I remember, this is why this is relevant to our next element. I need to find it. Why don't you put the next element up, Ryan? I'll find exactly what he said.
And he tried to organize a challenge to Pelosi around this kind of thing. So put up the Dave Weigel element next. It says, Senator Ed Markey facing a challenge from Moulton wore a trans rights flag during his No King speech, and Weigel correctly adds the context here, which is that Moulton said after the election he didn't want his daughters, quote, getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, unquote, saying that Democrats need to, reorganize their position, particularly when it comes to trans athletes.
And that's the thing, is I feel like he is very well understanding of the political moment. Because again, these are, whether he's acting on it or not, right, because of AIPAC, because of shipping weapons, continuing to ship weapons to Israel, regardless of if he takes AIPAC money or not, which I think underlies his allegiance to the military-industrial complex. But, that's the other part of it, too, is I think he realizes AIPAC is toxic, and then trans in sports, another 80-20 issue. No one who has any common sense wants trans males to be able to compete in female sports. That's an entirely different video, so I'm not even going to go into it. But it's not fair. Men are bigger, men are stronger, men are faster, point blank, period, the end. So he's realizing that, and he wants to distance himself from it. The question is are the Democratic voters going to go along with it? I think so, because again, it is 80-20, but those 20 are all on the Democratic side. And those are probably the ones most charged politically to go out and vote because of their stupid ideology. But again, that's to me, this shows that I think the rest of the Democratic Party could do well to emulate what he is doing, because he's distancing himself from these insane issues. And the best thing about that for him is you have a much larger opportunity to draw independents to vote for you. Whereas independents who are sitting in the middle and going, do I vote Republican or Democrat? I can't vote Democrat because they have these insane ideologies. Well, now you have a Democratic candidate who doesn't have these insane ideologies. And so you go, okay, I feel good about voting for him. Is that enough to offset, especially in a deeper blue state? Will that actually make a difference? Will that help? How big of a difference does that make? Remains to be seen, but at least I think, again, directionally, he's moving in the correct way. And you hope that it does pay off, because I would like to have an actual choice between the two parties. But when one of them is being insane in regards to trans issues and, no policing and all these things that just seem like they're literally trying to destroy the country, well, then how can you vote for that party? It just, I couldn't, and this is speaking as someone in the middle, so I'm sure everyone else who is an independent would think the same thing.
Who plays in which
Yeah, I have the full quote. Democrats spend way too much time trying to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. As a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid. To say that, to be clear, I firmly believe there should be reasonable restrictions on transgender athletes in competitive sports. Now, obviously, I'm not a Democrat in Massachusetts, so makes sense to me, but apparently that's a very difficult position for some Democrats to take.
It's very interesting because it's like an 80-20 issue that where you're talking about, if you talk about post-puberty, like 80 plus, maybe 90+% of people will say that kids should play in the sports where they're assigned their gender at birth. That this idea where you're going to have a high school kid who's like choose trans and switching, like when it comes to a general election, they're losing that terribly. It's very interesting that Markey thinks that in a Democratic primary, he's going to win. He's going to win this 80-20 issue. On the other side,
he might be right.
He might be right.
There's been a lot of trans retrenchment, if you ask me. It's kind of interesting. We haven't been able to cover it, but trans identification is at record lows already, basically proving it's a social contagion. Sorry, yes, that's correct. Always has been. But the point actually,
and I look forward. I guarantee you, I will cover it when they make a video about it because I have very strong feelings about it. In fact, I recreated an entire John Oliver video to avoid a content strike so that I could talk about the issue. So yes, I 100,000 million% agree. Yeah, makes absolutely no sense. And just to bring it back down so I don't go on like an hour rant about that. Yes, I think, and this is why I think it might be politically feasible, is because it could bring in, again, more centrists that say, I would like to vote for Democrats because I don't like what I'm seeing on the Republican side now. But when you contrast the two, well, the left still seems way more extremist, so I can't possibly vote for them. And that's where I think we are. And that's the decision you have to make. So you have to walk yourself back from these 80-20 issues where you're on the 20 side. Or 90-10 issues where you're on the 10 side. Like, yes, it might be your base and that's what animates them is that you're pro-trans. But again, this is an extremely unpopular opinion. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I think there's a very real possibility, because what I have always maintained is that if your base is going to vote for you regardless. So if you come out as moderate and common sense and you're on the 80% on every single 80-20 issue, well then people are going to, I think you are much more likely to win a general election, especially at the national level, right? In a deep blue or deep red state, that may not be the case, right? But I would like to see it proven out in that scenario because, again, I think these ideals have gotten so maximalist on either side that it's no longer a tenable position to have some of these ideologies.
Broadly around the trans sports issue, and this is more my political analyst hat on, is I could see how he would get attacked for, what's the language they always use, like throwing trans people under the, even though quite literally he's talking about athletes. I could see how the activist and Democratic class would say that giving an inch in any way to the Republicans on this issue is cowardly. Again, this is not a general election point. This is a Democratic primary point.
But nobody will talk about this honestly, though, because there are a lot of trans activists who disagree with that and who say it is wrong to die on this hill because if we die on this hill, then we're all getting swept away. And there are plenty.
And that's a very good point, because here's the other thing that no one wants to talk about is that if you talk to actual trans people, right, or people who this actually affects who aren't mentally unwell, right, they will have the belief that, yeah, they shouldn't be in sports. All it is it's basically like white liberal women with blue hair and septum rings and tattoos everywhere that are saying, oh no, we need to be so, it's basically suicidal empathy. where you're being so empathetic to a group where it's literally turning other people against that group. And the thing is, they're not actually inclusive of that group. So it doesn't actually harm them that people are now saying, we don't want trans, now we can turn on trans bathrooms, now, which I think men going into women's bathrooms is probably not great regardless, but now they can turn on, we don't want anyone to be able to identify as trans, we don't want any sort of transition to be allowed. It can fly in a very conservative way very fast when you are being so maximalist in we need to have trans women in women's sports. Again, you're risking these people who are advocating for it are not actually advocating for what is in the best interest of the trans group.
Plenty of trans people who are on the 80 side of this 80-20 issue. They're like, no, like, stop. Like, Leah Thomas should not be swimming against other women. Like, whatever.
Yeah, but I don't see a lot of those people speaking up, Brian.
They don't. No, they're not. That's the point. But if you talk to them either privately or, yes.
And that's a good point from Sagar. But at the same time, I think what the rebuttal to that is, because then you just get ostracized by your own group, right? The left has been the ones who have always welcomed them in and have been accepting of them, but now it's gotten to a point where they've went so far to the fringe that they're endangering them. But at the same time, if you are a trans person, you can't really speak out against them because the right has been equally as radicalized the other way. Where they're now, and this is why I'm saying, this is the exact point that I was just making, is that now, if you're on the right, you're basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater, where you're saying these people are so insane that we do not accept trans people at all, and we do not want them. We don't even want to admit they exist because we find the left's views so abhorrent that, and I don't think that they should do this, right? Because you should be welcoming trans people into your side, because who is a stronger proponent for your views than someone who is on that side, right? If you're a trans person, you're saying, no, we shouldn't have trans women, so male to female, in female sports. If you can have trans people singing that song in your group, then, hey, that's great, right? That just makes that argument that much stronger. But again, I think the right is so basically radicalized against it that they're not welcoming in trans people, and then guess what? Trans people are basically held hostage. They're not allowed to speak out against it. And although they may not speak out for it, you legitimately feel like you've been born in the same body, which I believe is a thing, right? I totally believe that can happen. I do believe it is also a contagion issue as well, especially recently. But I do know people who just seem like they were born in the wrong body, and they always, acted like a male, and they have transitioned, and they seem perfectly happy, right? And I do not begrudge them at all. So I do think it is a thing that can happen. But those people are endangered from people who basically have suicidal empathy. And they're pushing so hard for inclusivity that they're harming that actual group. So yeah, that's the problem, is they can't, the people who are actually trans and doing it for the right reasons cannot speak up, because then they will be essentially politically homeless.
But you're right.
Well, listen, I hope he wins for this reason. If they would have
this conversation, they would find that there is not a monolithic kind of trans position on this.
Well, it doesn't seem that way with the activist class. Again, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I'm being had, fairly certain that there. I don't remember exactly who. There was somebody in the. I think it was Emma Vigeland who attacked him over this, if I recall, right? So there's going to be some activist pressure. Moulton, because this was at the very days after the election. He got hit by everybody. Hard. But that's my question: is politically in the Democratic base. Listen, I get it, because a lot of Republicans are like this too. They don't want to give the enemy a single inch, right? They're like, no, we fight together. We don't concede a single point of what we got wrong.
And that is the thing that I hate about left versus right politics, is that, yeah, you're not willing to move off, especially the people who are most radical on either side. They're not willing to move off of it at all. Like, and the problem is they have given no thought to any of their positions, and it's literally just a cult. And whatever the cult decides, you have to go along with that ideology and carry it all the way through to the very end. And it's on both sides. That's what's so frustrating about it, is that you can't reason with these people. You can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. Because if you actually thought about it, and just using the trans example here, if you actually think about it and you go through and you just look at, just look at track and field. There's no qualitative analysis to be had here. It's literally, what is the time? What is the exact time that you run? What is the exact height that you jump? What is the exact, up and down the list? Men beat women 100% of the time. There is no argument that when you're a male, you're faster, you're stronger, you're bigger than a female. And so even if you're taking hormones or whatever, you're still yes, okay, you're in the parameter, but you still have a bunch of benefits that you have accrued, and they've been proven out of going through puberty as a male. Even if you transition, whatever, it's still not fair. And so that is the issue. And so, yeah, when you're arguing that, you can't, it's literally an indefensible position. And so, yeah, that's the problem with that, is that you can't, even with all the proof, they're not willing, people who support that are not willing to back down from it, which to me is just completely insane.
Of what is unpopular, we just continue to fight. I could see Markey making that into an issue. But this is the other thing where, issue and all of that aside, shouldn't it just be Presley versus Moulton? Dude, you're 80 years old. You need to leave.
Right.
You're going to be 80. Let me get his age exactly correctly. But
yes, this should be
it's
Presley
just
versus
completely he's 79, right? He's running for re-election. Or at least for right now, he would be 86, 87 when he ended his term. Why are we okay with that? I'm sorry. How are you going to beat the Kennedys and say we don't have dynasties in this country, and then nearly put yourself in a position where statistically you're going to die in office?
Right.
It's the height of selfishness.
And I think
it's not just the height of selfishness, but the other huge issue with it is you're totally disconnected. And when you've been in office for that amount of time, you're totally disconnected from what the average citizen is going through. That's why no one understands AI. There's no sort of regulation. They're just handing out, okay, go subsidize your energy costs with these AI data centers. Any of these issues that the average Americans are facing, these representatives are just completely detached. Because they're so old, and they have so much money from insider trading and all these other things. They cannot understand the average American struggles. And that's exactly it. That's where it just, it's just so frustrating. And so, yeah, they need to just get these sorts of people out of office. I'm sorry. If you want the government and, to be prepared and understand how we can make America better, these people are out to lunch mentally. I'm sorry, but no one who's 80 years old has nearly the mental acuity of even themselves when they were 40, 50, 60. When you're 80, you can't die in office. Retirement age, I'm sorry, you should have to leave. Just like there's a minimum age, there should be a maximum age.
These people.
Yeah, and I think Ayanna Presley, if you're watching, you should just jump
Yeah,
in.
you run, and you can take the trans Leah Thomas position, all right? And then we can actually have a real debate.
And that might push Ed Markey out.
Yeah, maybe, right? That would actually,
because
that's what I can't stand.
Yeah.
More than the trans thing, I would rather it, God, I'm so sick of these people who are hanging on to office. It's disgusting. It actually is. And it's so disrespectful, I think, to the people of Massachusetts. It's a hard blue state. They deserve to actually have a raucous interesting primary, new generation, actual representation in their state. That's who they are, right? I mean, it's a very productive state, a lot of history.
At the same time, though, it's the voters' fault too. Like, I don't know. They need to. At some point, you just need to understand that. Okay, we'll plug our noses. Like, if there's no other path, we'll plug our noses. We'll vote red one time just to force the candidate out, and then we'll continue the next election voting blue. Like, that's what should happen. Would it actually happen? Absolutely not, because, again, they're so far left and captured by that nothing will ever... Logic does not enter your brain at that point in time. But that's what should happen. Like, when someone continues to be in office over and over and they're 80 years old, you need to force them out one way or another.
And all that, and to have somebody who's that old, like, I'm sorry, I know how the Senate works. They don't work that hard for you. They just don't. They have to nap all the time. They are basically like, even for travel and everything, they just will not have the same amount of vigor, in the words of John F. Kennedy, that any younger person will. It's simple. Your time is up, dude. Like, yeah, he has served 20 terms in the U.S. Congress. That's insane. And he still wants to keep
72?
going.
Was he class of 72?
Let me find. 76.
Oh, 76. Oh, he's a newcomer. Spring chicken.
Here's the thing. Here's what you got. Here's how old Ed Markey is. As the U.S. representative from Massachusetts from 1976 to 2013, he entered the year after the helicopter left the U.S. Embassy of Saigon, which is black and white photo. That is how old this man is. That's how, like, the way that I think about a Ken Burns documentary, he was literally watching that on TV and served in the U.S. Congress the year after that. I'm sorry. Like, if you can remember that, you gotta go.
Anyway, I thought that was a very interesting video. I did want to cover it because it is AIPAC, right? I want to cover it for that. But then a more broad message about just politics in general, which I think are good things to call out. And then, hey, what is the political viability of taking the 80% in an 80-20 issue, even if it doesn't align with your base? Again, I think we'll see what happens with it. I hope that it goes well, because I think we do need to bring some sort of common sense back into politics, because it's gotten way too polarized and insane, in my opinion. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me like this, drop a subscription below. It really does help my channel grow. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.